When it comes to scary movies, The Exorcist is considered one of the scariest movies of all time. In fact, when it came out, people who went to go see it got so sick and was so bothered by it that people even threw up in the aisles. Some people even ran out of the theaters, and to this day, people won't watch it. People are terrified of this movie, probably because it's based off of actual events that took place in both Maryland and here in St. Louis. Right down this street, actually. Getting a little nervous about this one.
I went to check it out. The manager of the National Theater in Westwood says that there indeed are at least a dozen people who faint or become ill during every showing. But The Exorcist is still drawing sellout houses for every performance, complete with lines around the block. I spent an evening in the lobby just to see if people really do come stumbling out in the middle of the picture, as reported. They did, so I asked them why.
It just scared me to death. Things just like this, really scared me to death. I'm just nervous.
Do you remember what particular scene it was that
when she was in, what was it? When she was in a room, the doctors came in, and I guess it was when she was talking the devil's voice. Oh God, I can't believe it.
All right, let's see what the keep away. This hour is mine.
Are you going to go back in and see more of the movie now?
Probably, yeah.
What are you going to do right now?
I don't want to see it, but my curiosity is killing me. I have to see it.
I fainted like 10 minutes after the first beginning of the movie. And I walked out, and they gave me some water.
Yeah? Do you remember what caused you to faint?
Well, they started that spinal tap or whatever so. And I started closing my eyes, and I could hear the gagging, and I was getting sicker. And I walked up the aisle with my friend, and I was just ready to pass out.
Yeah.
I passed out in about the first half hour, yeah.
Do you remember what it was, what scene it was that affected you so much?
Convulsions, when she took convulsions. Because I have a little girl, and it was like watching my little girl.
I think it's disgusting.
Why?
I don't know, it doesn't, you know, it doesn't make me want to get sick like everybody says. My legs are just going, nyeh, and I want to go in the lobby and not watch it, and I have to cover my ears.
What was it that made that happen?
Just when she started talking like devil coming out of her.
How about you?
I can't even describe it. It's so horrible. I don't know why I waited 4 hours to see that.
The devil made her did it, I bet.
Wherever I come, bad luck just comes my way. Wherever I go, hard luck is that it stays. Good luck never stays a day. Bad luck's always coming my way.
For those of you who do not know, The Exorcist follows a 12-year-old girl by the name of Reagan, who's played by Linda Blair. And after playing with a Ouija board, she contacts a spirit that she calls Captain Howdy. She becomes possessed, and things just kind of take a very nasty turn, and people never look at pea soup the same again. The movie The Exorcist, directed by William Friedkin, is actually based off of a novel by William Peter Blatty, who got the inspiration for his book from a newspaper article about a 14-year-old boy who was supposedly demon-possessed.
Now, I found out through your biography that you had actually researched an exorcist that happened with a boy back in 1950-something, was it?
It was 1949,
okay,
when I first heard of it.
And then how did that inspire you to write?
Well, imagine hearing about, for the first time in your life, having never heard of possession, hearing the details, so-called details, of an alleged case of demonic possession going on in your neighborhood while you're attending classes at Georgetown University. I mean, it was absolutely startling. And I thought at the time that if one could adduce enough evidence to demonstrate that this was most probably authentic, what a tremendous piece of evidence for our hopes for immortality of the soul, our hopes for everything I was being taught by the Jesuits at Georgetown being an absolute fact. We all want to put our fingers into the wound in the hand of Christ.
Now, I guess that's the big difference between fact and fiction. In the movie, it's a 12-year-old girl, Reagan, but in real life, it's a 14-year-old boy known as Roland Doe. Now, the church never gave the identity of the boy up until recently. Well, actually, they never gave the identity of the boy. Internet sleuths were able to figure it out and track down the location, so much respect to them. Now, here's the real story in a nutshell. There's a lot of moving parts and a lot of stories and a lot of rumors and a lot of speculation. Now, right now, I'm walking down a sidewalk on Roanoke Drive to the house here in St. Louis where the exorcism took place. But it originally started in Maryland, but it got so bad, people got hurt, that the family, after seeing the word Lewis cut into Roland Doe's body, they took that as a sign to come here to St. Louis where they had some close family. Now, here's where the story starts to get a little strange. Supposedly, Roland Doe, we're going to talk about his name a little bit later on, had an aunt by the name of Aunt Harriet, who was a bit of a spiritualist, and she was the one who introduced Roland Doe to a Ouija board, and they used to play it together. Now, kind of mirroring the movie, Roland Doe started playing with the Ouija board by himself, and not too long after she died, he started playing with it, trying to contact her. It was roughly, according to reports that I've read, 11 days after her death where strange things, like really strange, things moving, things started to get violent, like poltergeist activity. Those started 11 days after Aunt Harriet's death. Now, I do want to point out as well that in the movie, The Exorcist, it was the Catholic Church that was performing the exorcism, but in real life, since the family was Lutheran, they actually seek the help of Lutheran church officials. It wasn't until they moved here to St. Louis when the Catholic Church got involved. Now, when Roland Doe and his family came out here to St. Louis, this is where their close family was living, on 8435 Roanoke Drive in the Belle Noire section of St. Louis. Now, I reached out to the family and I thought we had something set up, but sadly we can't get inside the house to see where Roland Doe's bedroom was. But it is believed to be on the second floor, don't know where the exorcism here in St. Louis took place. Well, the beginning of it. Everything that went on inside this house was very well documented by one of the priests who was there for the exorcism. He actually kept a pretty detailed diary of it. In fact, that diary was actually used by William Peter Blatty whenever he was writing the book. So that's kind of cool, a little piece of information, right? Now, things inside this house started getting violent, just like in Washington, D.C. Instead of somebody being cut, there was one point where Roland Doe actually broke free and punched one of the priests in the nose, breaking his nose in the process. Now, if I'm not mistaken, it was only about 2 weeks that the exorcism was actually here, taking place inside this house. He was only in here for 2 weeks until he was moved to another location. Now, here in St. Louis, to be completely honest, there's 3 different locations that the exorcism took place. When you think of The Exorcist, I know you think of the house and the stairs made famous from that terrifying movie. And yes, I said terrifying movie because it still terrifies me when I watch it today. I absolutely love religious horror. But we walk history. There's so much more to the story. I heard once, or maybe I read somewhere, that every story is based off of real life, right? I mean, I guess that's the human nature. Everything, every bit of creativity is based off of something that happened in real life. And this is just part of the story of The Exorcist. Now, before we head out to the other locations, let's go ahead and give you the true identity of the little boy. His name was Ronald Hunkeler. I think that's how you say it. Hunkeler. Now, Ronald, a little bit of difference from Ronald and Roland from the priest's diary. He lived a full life. In fact, I think he actually worked for NASA for quite a few years, and he retired. He's passed away now, and if I'm not mistaken, he's buried in Maryland, not too far from where the movie The Exorcist took place. Our next stop in the story of the exorcism here in St. Louis brings us to this church in downtown St. Louis. In fact, not too far down the road that you're looking at is the Fox Theater. Now you have to keep in mind that when it comes to history, things change all the time. The exorcism took place in 1949, and at the time of recording this, it is 2022, which means it was over 73 years ago that this took place. Now, this church is still standing. It's probably one of the most beautiful ones here in St. Louis, but the exorcism actually took place in the back of this church briefly. I think it was maybe a month that they were here, but way in the back there was a rectory. It's no longer standing. They actually tore it down to make way for a newer building. But this is where Roland Doe was held, where they performed parts of the exorcism back in 1949. Just want to walk back here and just kind of get a feel. I mean, come on, 73 years ago, of course, things are going to change. But it's still pretty wild to just be walking this history. There is a plaque here talking about some of the history that happened here, but I know it's not the happiest of moments here in St. Louis, but I was really hoping that there'd be something stating, hey, this is where this famous, infamous piece of horror history happened. But nothing.
Of all the places, I don't think the church would acknowledge such a thing, really.
Right? I mean, even at the time, they were so hush-hush about it.
Yeah. They're still kind of hush-hush.
Right? After the movie The Exorcist came out, the church was not too happy about how it was depicted. I'm talking like green pea soup and crucifixes going into places they probably shouldn't have been going. And the funny thing about what happened, they said, no, that's not how we roll, that's not how exorcisms happen, but they never once denied that an exorcism took place here in 1949. Dare I say, it definitely is a beautiful day for an exorcism. Oh man. So this is a church that's on the corner of the St. Louis University, one of the biggest university here in St. Louis, right?
Yeah.
So I wonder how many students know the history like this. Directly behind the church is this building right here, and obviously it's a lot newer. It says the St. Francis Xavier College Church Parish Center. I don't know if this is where the rectory was, but it's definitely behind the building, and everything that we read online, the exorcism actually took place behind the building in the rectory, so we're just gonna go ahead and say that this was it. And we saw a sign that you can actually go into the parish center and buy some candles. So we're gonna go up inside and see if there's something we can take home from the Exorcist church. Because of everything that's going on in the world, they're only allowing one person in the office at a time. So I have no idea what's going on inside there. Jessica, she was the first in, so I'm just hanging back and hoping, fingers and bones crossed, that maybe we can get a candle from this place. A little, you know, exorcism candle, whatever you want to call it. While waiting though, here's a view from the front steps of the parish center. St. Louis is definitely a place with a bunch of history. Sadly, a lot of it is abandoned or burned down or left to rot, but there still is so much beauty here. When it comes down to it, this is really just a small stop on our story about the exorcism that happened here back in 1949. Again, the building out back is no longer here, so there's really nothing to see, but as walkers of history, you kind of have to stop. You know, it's walking history, walking the steps of this famous incident that inspired so much nightmares and horror. Not only for a family, but for countless of people who watched the movie and read the book. At this point, I'm just walking around the building, exploring. And I came across this little staircase that goes down underneath the parish. Let's get down here so you can see this. There's some artwork down here. I am loved, I am worthy, I am safe, I am seen, I am forgiven, I am not alone. Wow. Even though pretty much everything that took place back here in 1949 was in the back of the church, we're going to walk through the church right now to show what it looks like, because it's beautiful. I'm going to keep it quiet because there are people in there praying and, you know, doing what they do. Everything's so quiet. Wow. Truly beautiful. The third stop on our St. Louis exorcism tour brings us to the corner of Broadway and Osage Street. Now what you're looking at right now is the St. Alexia Hospital. It didn't look like this back in 1949, but you see that concrete wall, that rock wall that's right there? Now it's a parking lot, but back in 1949, there was a building that stood here, and this is where the little boy was brought. And this is where the final battle between good and evil took place. Now, I swear this wasn't intentional. It's kind of an unconscious nod to the movie The Exorcist, but if you look right across the street here, there's a lamppost. Now, the story goes, after the little boy, Roland Doe, was successfully exorcised, that good won and the devil went back to hell, supposedly they sealed up that room and nobody ever went in it again. And then the building was torn down. But this is it. Crazy, right? Doing these mini documentaries for YouTube, I often find myself wondering why there are no plaques or anything describing or commemorating the history, good or bad, that happened in these locations. Now, the hospital has been long closed, but whenever it was open, so rumor is, story is, however you want to call it, on their website they had a page talking about what happened here on property. Went looking for it. Since the hospital is closed, the website is sadly gone. But even though so much has changed, no matter how hard you try, you can't erase the history that happened on the property. You just can't. Our fourth and final stop on our St. Louis exorcism tour brings us to Calvary Cemetery. Now, if we were to keep going straight down this road, it's the Bellefontaine Cemetery where the Lemps are buried, and Clark from Lewis and Clark's expedition, they're buried there. Here in this cemetery, however, there's a whole bunch of priests, including one in particular that we've come here to see. Now we're in section 33 of this cemetery, and this is where you'll find the final resting place of Reverend William Bodern. Now, Reverend Bodern, he was the chief priest that was overseeing the exorcism back in 1949. In fact, go a little further with this one. In the movie The Exorcist, his character was portrayed by Max von Sydow.
The power of Christ compels you! The power of Christ compels you! The power of Christ compels you!
Now, Jessica's really good at locating the graves in the cemetery. Now, we weren't sure entirely where he was buried, but Jessica was smart and she found where all the other reverends were. And this is it. And there it is. Just a simple stone. Reverend William S. Bodern, 1897 to 1983. Again, he was the chief exorcist, the chief priest in the exorcism in the 1949 exorcism of Roland Doe. which we know his name. Crazy, right? And there it is. Just a simple stone, Reverend William S. Bodern, 1897 to 1983. Again, he was the chief exorcist, the chief priest in charge of the 1949 exorcism of Roland Doe. Now, of course, we know Roland's real name. And how wild is it to be standing right here, paying respects? The wind is really starting to pick up out here in the cemetery. But that's okay. I think that's pretty much it for our tour, our visit of the Exorcist locations here in St. Louis from 1949, 73 years ago at the time of filming this. It's funny, we get a lot of requests to come out here and visit the exorcism house. And we try to take requests and make them happen. We do a lot of research, so we knew about this place, and Jessica being from here, we wanted to come back, and it was on our agenda, so it was pretty special to do that. And of course, we don't like to just visit one little place. We want to visit everything. We want to try to tell as much of a complete story as we possibly can, because after all, it is history and it is people's lives. With that being said, thank you for joining us on another Grimm adventure. And as always, happy Halloween.
Wherever I come, bad luck just comes my way. Wherever I go, hard luck is there to stay. Good luck never stays a day. Bad luck's always coming my way.